Thank you all for joining today's Twitter Spaces, Building Through the Bear Market. My name is Adam Mosney. I head up I'm head of community for Overclock Labs, contributing to the Akash network. Really stoked to have you guys here today. We have tons of updates that Greg will cover, and we have a very important person to introduce here today as well. I want to thank you guys for joining. I just want to quickly introduce our guest. First up is Greg Osuri, founder of Overclock Labs, and core contributor and founder to Akash Network. How are you doing today, Greg?
Doing great.
Excellent. And next up is really, I would say, the guest of honor. The newest member of the Overclock Labs team is Nadia Bajuelo, the community events manager here at Overclock Labs. Hey, Nadia, how are you doing today?
Hey, Adam. Good. Super excited to be here. Great job on my last name, by the way.
I know. I'm fortunate enough to have met you in person now, so I've been practicing in front of the mirror, just saying Bajuelo, Bajuelo. So thank you for jumping on here. So we do have a lot of things to cover in terms of Akash updates that we'll be handing it off here to Greg in a second. But before we do that, I did want to do kind of a quick introduction to Nadia Bajuelo. So Nadia joined about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the newest member of the Overclock Labs team. She's going to be focused on in-person and online events, as well as kind of community building. So I wanted to kind of just toss the mic over to Nadia so she could maybe quickly introduce herself, talk a little bit about how you got to this point and, what you're excited about doing here at Overclock Labs. Take it away, Nadia.
Thanks, Adam. Hey, yeah. So a little bit about myself. So work-life wise, I've been more than 10 years in events and experiential marketing, and I come from the normie world, I guess you could say. General Mills is who I worked with before. And then outside of work, I've got a serious travel bug and sold everything, bought an RV, hit the road with my husband and 2 dogs, and lived on the road across the US and Canada. And then as far as what brought me to Akash, well, I was looking to join the Web3 and crypto space. It's such a dynamic and exciting space right now. And the more I looked into Akash, the more I saw this great opportunity, and I got really excited. I noticed that a lot of Web3 projects are still reliant on really centralized Web2 giants. And I feel that for Web3 and crypto to fulfill its promise of decentralization, they need to be on decentralized platforms. And I thought Akash was well positioned to fill in that need. And then as far as what I'm excited to do, well, I'm excited to get to know all of you guys and create exciting events, fun events, events where, you guys can learn and get as excited about Akash as I am.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you for that. So I'm going to toss the mic over to Greg to give some updates on Akash, and take it away, Greg.
Thanks, Adam. Well, first question, how is everyone doing? I know we've been through quite the roller coaster. Just respond using an emoji if you can. Twitter Space has reactions. I'll say, there's a crying emoji and there's a heart emoji, I suppose. But anyway, lots of crazy things. So today I want to talk about a few items, right? So I got questions. The original, plan I had was to, give you just what's happening with the Akash team, and some conversations around inflation and some of our thought process and community thought process. How much progress we made with the AKT burn mint mechanism, how we were impacted with Luna crash, and really how we're funded the development and how we're going to fare through the next 2 to 3 years of potential bear market. And what are some of my thoughts? I think how long the bear market is going to last and whatnot. And also, I got some interesting questions from the community. One was what is the current state of GPUs? Are you in touch with big potential customers other than blockchain nodes like ML companies? Do companies know are interested in Akash? What do you think is the biggest hurdle right now of getting bigger adoption? With that in mind, what could be biggest catalyst to get adoption? Would it be GPU support or managed services platform? And we're seeing other questions. What are the biggest challenges for Akash in upcoming months? And what are still huge technical problems that we have to overcome? And the questions of like, do you actually think Akash can capture 1% of the compute market and generate billions in revenue? So a lot of like general questions, but also I think a lot of like hyper, short-term questions as well. Please comment on the my tweet thread that I had going on about your questions, so I can answer if you can. Raise your hand, request to be a speaker, and I'll let you up. Let you up here. That said, so update. So last we released the mainnet 3 about 45 days ago, and it's been, to be honest, not the smoothest ride. So the update alone took about 15 hours, and a lot of that has to do with the Cosmos upgrade module, even though our software is pretty stable and whatnot. There were certain bugs in a few modules that we developed, especially with inflation, the auto inflation that we wanted. So we have to get rid of that and rework that big bug and potentially relaunch in the future. But for the most part, I think we didn't have much impact on the existing workloads, and this is also a good test. People have been asking like, what happens if the blockchain goes down? Do all my applications that are running will go down? The answer is simply no, and we saw that stress test recently with a 15-hour upgrade that did not impact any of the working applications. So it's an amazing proof point that this model really works. And second is we've looked at seriously like the Akash blockchain has been in development since 7 years, right? So the actual source code, some of the source code goes back to 7 years, and during the 7 years, we had different engineers working on the source code, and different engineers means different patterns and different ways of doing things. So the source code has been building pretty much, and as you have like an old source code base, you gain something called technical debt, in the sense like, because there's so many different patterns, because there's so many different ways people do things, you that kind of impacts the performance of the code. The older the software, the more higher impact the technical debt has on it. So a big effort we noticed was to remove that, pay back some of the technical debt. So there's a huge refactoring progress that's happening. So since 16.3, 0.16.3, which is our mainnet version, we released about 4 release candidates. If you look at our GitHub, you'll see an idea, and each of them have to do with refactoring the code. So what we're doing when it comes to refactoring, number one, if anyone technical here, I think you'll like this. Number one, we're breaking down from a monolithic service to more microservices. A big chunk of our monolithic piece was the provider daemon. So removing parts like the bid engine, like the scheduling engine, and and essentially breaking them into smaller pieces that can be individually monitored, individually developed. So that's how we pay back the technical debt. So while that's happening, our front end teams have been really busy in designing a significantly superior user interface, user experience, right? And we did talk about how we were working on the command line interface. And we put a lot of work into essentially creating a user experience that ties down that basically brings the web and the command line interfaces in harmony. So it's a very advanced user experience. I think I recently posted a tweet on how simple it is to get started on to host an Osmosis node, and this is going to get even more simpler. A big chunk of that got to do with like improving their omnibus packages and adding something called remote signers to omnibus, so that we can actually attract a lot of the nodes to run on Akash. For context, uh, even though Akash is amazing, super cheap to run nodes and whatnot, there are some reservations we saw from the Cosmos SDK community or node community regarding security and privacy for the private keys. Folks, even though Akash is pretty secure, folks are not yet comfortable putting their private keys that sign validators on the network. And the solution for that is to decouple the key signing part from the validation part using something called remote signers. So our Omnibus package, Akash Omnibus package, does not currently support remote signers. So adding a remote signer to the Omnibus and giving that experience in a simple to use user experience, interface is going to be critical. And so the front end teams are hard at work and mocking up and designing these things. So you're going to see some really good updates on the user experience side in the coming months. And made quite a lot of progress in the IP marketplace. So IP marketplace is critical for so right now, Akash does not give you unique IP addresses. That means, the providers, you need to share the IP address using multiple ports. So that means you cannot have fixed ports in Akash. So that prevents several blockchains like Solana or, even Bitcoin, I think, Node requires fixed ports. Fixed ports are used for service discovery, essentially. So right now, Solana, even though we have persistent storage, and all the good stuff, they cannot run because we don't support fixed ports. So with this IP marketplace, you'll be able to support fixed ports. That code is in testing right now. It's code complete. We should be going to production very soon. And one of the cool things about this update is it does not require a chain update, so it doesn't require the validators to restart the chain. It's really on the provider side of things. They just need to upgrade to this new version. And soon you'll start seeing unique IP addresses. So this is a big feature for us that'll open up Solanas and tons of other blockchain nodes to easily deploy on Akash. So, and the team met recently for an offsite. It was really good to see people in real life. And we realigned on what we're doing. And it's really good because we're a remote team, we're about 28 people full-time it could be more, but full-time, along with a few other contractors. Most of the team is based in US, except for 3 folks that are outside US, one in Europe, one in Thailand, and there's actually 2 in Europe, right? So anyways, we met in Hawaii recently. It was really good to see everybody and realign. And the team is in high spirits, even with the impounding bear market. Team is super highly focused, super aligned, and we agreed on the exact thing what we're going to work on, and any questions or any reservations have been answered, and we are growing as a team, so which is very exciting. As you know, the market has been not very friendly to some of the bigger players. Coinbase is 20% layoffs and whatnot, but Akash is actually hiring. All right, so we're adding 20% more to our workforce. So this just should give you an idea as to how much work we have left and how much work we're about to be delivering over the next few months. So overall, it's a very exciting time to be at Akash, and the team is super highly aligned, super highly committed. I can't be more proud. I'll post some pictures from our offsite, but it's an amazing. It's amazing time to work at Akash. And if you're looking for a job, please, or if you know anybody that got laid off, please refer them to our careers web page, akash.network/careers. You'll see a list of openings that we have, and happy to talk to them. All right. So next, what we got? So anyone has any questions or any thoughts on it, please request yourself to be a speaker, and happy to answer the question. All right, moving on. Inflation. So there are two. Right now there's sort of like. So Akash, just a reminder, the Akash inflation model is inflationary deflation, right? So that means we have a fixed supply of 389 million tokens. That will be released over a period of 80 years, and that will be released on a decay curve. That means the amount of tokens, the emission percentage will drop at every block height, right? So right now, Akash, inflation, I believe, is somewhere, let's see, somewhere around 25%, 23%, right? And that means the staking APR, what the stakers get is about 32%, pretty healthy. And it's actually a little higher than what we originally proposed in the white paper. There are about 11 million extra tokens that are minted um, more than from our estimates, right? So first of all, so we need to put a proposal to lower the inflation according to what we propose in the white paper, along with certain adjustments to offset that 11 million. So that's straightforward. The question really is, we're thinking, well, so a lot of these tokens are so right now we're in a scenario where there's enormous sell pressure on pretty much the entire Cosmos ecosystem, right? And there's sell pressure that's coming from the on-chain, like the osmosis, AMM, because the AMM will adjust the tokens or the price of a KT based on osmosis. So there's a lot of inflation on osmosis that's lowering osmosis price because AKT Osmo pool has great liquidity that's impacting AKT price. So Osmos is actually like lowering a Akash price because of the AMM. The AMM will buy and sell. We'll try to adjust AKT, the amount of liquidity present in the pools based on the other assets, right? So we're getting some impact from that, and there's also too much liquidity. And liquidity is a double-edged sword. Liquidity is great in a bull market, but liquidity is horrible in a bear market because people are trying to sell, right? Or at least people are not trying to sell. It's AMM that's trying to sell on behalf of the people to protect the pool. So and there's another thought that, well, people are under panic right now. People are trying to get out as much, get as much money as possible. So a lot of the folks don't really understand that AKT's inflation is a token distribution mechanism more than just free tokens, right? So people think AKT extra rewards are just free tokens, and there's a lot of sell pressure that we are seeing. We're doing some more on-chain analysis to give you in depth how much of sell pressure is happening today, just from like inflows to the osmosis, inflows to exchanges that we can observe from our side. But initial thoughts here were it's a lot of sell pressure coming from the daily rewards. So something has to be done to eliminate the sell pressure, or we can forget about it till the bear market withers and come back to it later. But I think what I don't want is we have this enormous supply that's going to the wrong hands, right? So there are two essential solutions to this problem that I can think of. One is reduce inflation, right? Everybody takes a hit, and the problem with that is, well, there are loyal AKT holders, AKT stakers that keep compounding, and that are going to keep compounding no matter what, right? There are a lot of loyal community members that will take a hit from lowering inflation. But there'll be less float, so there'll be less sell pressure on AKT price. So they're kind of gaining from the AKT price going up, but let's be honest, AKT price right now is a bear market price. It's not going to move for a while, considering market conditions, right? Nothing is going to move for a while. So there is that. And second option is to increase the community tax. So community tax is essentially a percentage of tokens that are taken from the inflation and put into a community pool. The community pool is governed by on-chain governance, right? So how you spend the community pool depends on token holders and depends on how they vote, right? So an idea is increase the community tax to about 50%, or something significant, and do a community vote to airdrop those tokens to loyal holders. I mean, let's say depending on how long they've staked. Like people that stake for a long time get more tokens. People that stake for less time get less tokens, right? So it's a time-based sort of like incentive for long-term holders. So that way, long-term holders get incentivized. The inflation and the right people, that means the right people get incentivized for their loyalty, and the wrong people that sell tokens won't get incentivized. We can even go further and be like, hey, these tokens sold, yada yada. We can do all kinds of like, creative things to identify the most loyal holders. Uh, so that's the advantage of governance we have, right? Governance is based on community, based on what people are feeling, and market conditions change all the time. So automating inflation versus a governing-based token distribution has its advantages. It also has disadvantages because I mean sometimes it can be gamed. So the pros and cons to approaches. Um, I'm still like researching. I'm still asking community. Obviously, the results for lowering the inflation, we had about 1,000 votes, and all of them said to lower the inflation, and a good portion, like 41% or so, said to lower the inflation under 7%. But again, that's mob speaking, and I want a little more thoughtful, approach to this problem. So if anyone has any comments, please, this is the time to speak up. Please request to be a speaker, and we'll get you on stage.
Yeah, we have about 5-ish or so more minutes. So yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to jump in. Or if you have questions for Nadia on kind of her new role, feel free to jump in.
What do you mean 5-ish? I thought we were doing this for an hour.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I thought this was going to be a shorter one, but yeah, we can go over, no problem.
You still have a ton of updates, right? Okay, so let's see. Those are the inflation thoughts. So if anyone has any thoughts, now it's time to speak. Economics. So we're working through AKD economics. We're introducing burn and mint capability. Obviously, looking at the current state of algorithmic stablecoins, it's very, very, very concerning to. You have to be very careful on how you design this burn and mint mechanism. One of the biggest concerns I have is like, well, if you essentially if your debts payable is higher than your market value, then you create a debt spiral, right? So we want to introduce an AKD stablecoin, but the stablecoin will be extremely limited to only pay for deployments. And that means you cannot use that stablecoin to send money. I can't send you a AKD stablecoin. Send functionality would not be enabled. So there is no incentive to hold the stablecoin except to deploy on Akash. So there will be some sort of penalty for holding them long. For long-term stablecoin holders, the idea is to encourage people to convert it back to AKT. There are pros and cons for both approaches, and it's a lot of care is going into designing the stable mechanism. But we're not taking shortcuts like Terra or any other algorithmic stablecoins. So we're studying a lot of the current existing stablecoins, understanding, looking at the market right now. Market is going through lots of changes, which is giving us enormous amount of data. So we're not going to rush the stablecoin design, but the work is happening right there. GPUs, we are ready. We are spec ready. We have about 20 customers, that are ready to jump on the GPU, at least help us validate it. And it's very, very exciting. GPUs is one of the most requested feature for Akash, not only from our community, but from our users. And a lot of these users have enormous spend. So we are really, really excited. Again, it's a very complicated feature, especially doing a generically schedulable GPUs. No one has done GPUs. Even the people that claim that they have GPUs are not used for machine learning. Most GPUs are only used for mining, and that's a completely different use case. So designing a general purpose GPU cloud is extremely challenging because GPUs are very variable. So we are spec ready in the sense that we have we think that we have a very solid spec to start implementing the GPU design. So you should be seeing quite a few updates there. Again, we have so much work that we're doing. We need more people. So right now, our biggest challenge for Akash is not the technical chops, but just people to start to implement these features that we have designed. So we have several projects that are happening, right? So we have a new UI, we have new command line interfaces, we have new validator operations, uh, uh, smoothing validator operations through Omnibus. We have GPUs, we have IP marketplaces, along with other items on the roadmap. So there's a lot of work we're doing, and we're definitely looking for a lot of people. And from funding standpoint, Overclock Labs, which is the incorporated uh, uh, company, and we all technically work for Overclock Labs, and that's a legal entity. Akash, again, is not a company; it's a network, so it doesn't have any legal entity. It's a network of people that are building on Akash, right? Overclock Labs certainly created Akash network, but now we are seeing quite a lot of contributions from the community, and the goal is to transition to fully community owned in the very near future. So Overclock Labs is a well-funded organization. We have, and we're fortunate to raise funds, well before the market had a downturn, and we raised funds from private venture capitalists, and we have right now, conservatively, I could say about 2 years, and optimistically about 3 years of financing. Uh, Hoping like there's no other like crazy things that'll happen. We hope not, but we have enough. Fortunately, we have enough finance to weather a long bear market. So during this time, we're just going to be focused on building and adoption. Our biggest priority, obviously, is retention for Akash Network. So we're seeing quite a bit of new leads and new users coming, but we're also seeing quite a bit of drop off, and a lot of the drop off is happening because there's no way to notify people. There's no sort of like, it's very challenging once you use the application. Second time updating the application seems to be challenging from the user experience standpoint. So we have specific feedback that we're working through, and of course we're massively hired a product teams, full-time product managers now, working through customers, working through some of these critical problems and solving them, but solving them so in a diligent way. The beautiful thing about Akash is we are not sitting in dark, right? We have deployed a product, we have users using the product. Now we are getting incredible feedback, and we are measuring how we are retaining users, how we are acquiring the users, how we are growing, what our vital coefficients will look like. So now is the time when we start focusing on these key metrics that were kind of like important in the Web 2 world, but people ignored in the Web 3 world because let's be honest, there's no real products yet until like this phase, right? So now we're seeing a lot of real products coming in, and now the real metrics start getting their importance, right? So we're hyper focused on those metrics. The goal is to have a highly sticky product that is growing really well, and once we see a bull market turn, the attention is obviously going to go to good products, right? Not the most hype products, because now is the time to build, right? The hype time is done. So a lot of the projects that purely built on hype will die during this bear cycle, and that's an amazing thing. Projects that actually deliver value, projects that can deliver value, but also show the incredible metrics when it comes to retention and when it comes to adoption, will survive the bear market and thrive when the bull markets come. So this is an amazing time because builders will get more attention than the shillers, right? So I'm particularly excited. We have the money for next to weather the bear market. We have the team, and we are growing, and we have an amazing roadmap, and we're building, and we're delivering, and we're hyper focused on what's important when it comes to metrics that are retention and adoption. So, any questions?
Hey, Greg. Yeah, I actually do have a few questions. So my opinion about everything is that I'm thinking that you're looking at everything wrong, okay? I'll tell you why. Eventually, let's say the retail investors, when they're investing in Akash, they don't really have the use case to use the AKT and to preserve and not dump the, let's say, the tokens. Okay, I'm looking at it in a different perspective. My question to you is, how do you planning to attract the big companies which needs your special AKT and all the features it giving, and how are you planning to bring them and not the retail investors? Because eventually they'll use it and not dump it on the investors. And I think once the big companies and the big names will, let's say, join the team, we will see the real adoption and the real success of Akash.
It's a good question. So your question is, what are we doing to attract large companies to use Akash?
Exactly.
Large Web2 companies to use Akash. Yes. So that's essentially where we are going, right? Let's be honest and true to where Akash is right now, and let's look at what is attractive to the Web2 companies, right? So Akash right now is very basic platform in the sense you can run an ephemeral workload. Now we have persistent storage, but even that you can run workloads. You can store the workload, and then you can orchestrate it. We have about 30 providers, which is not less, but we have, it's small enough, right? Just to get the product market fit. So the biggest priorities right now is product market fit. Do we have providers that are actually making money? Are the users willing to use the product in a usable way? Is the retention high? Is the adoption high? Right? Fundamentals first before you can get into like big bucks. If you can't walk, you can't run. Right?
Yeah.
So that we are seeing incredible results. We are actually seeing profitability on providers. People are actually making money. It's not straightforward. They do have to tune their hardware to meet certain workloads, but we are seeing a lot of PMF in the product in the users, and we are seeing a lot of PMF in the user side, in the tenant side as well. We can see quite a bit of nodes actually moving to Akash from your traditional work or traditional cloud, right? So that baseline has to be achieved. Now, next is like when big companies look at something like Akash versus, let's say, Amazon, right? So there's a matrix they look at. Is Akash easy to use? Does Akash have the capabilities to support my use case? Does Akash has the cost model that's attractive to me, right? Big companies just don't go on like lower prices. I mean, for them, it's not about lower prices, even though price has a lot of impact, but it's about, can I do what I want to do in the most optimal way? And does the product function, right? So look at what they need. What can Akash give that Amazon can give? Distribution. Once providers are profitable, that is something that can be used to attract other providers, right? Because there's actual money to be made here, right? So that will enable provider incentives that will massively grow provider base. Once we have 300 to 500 providers, that is significantly higher geo presence than, let's say, an Amazon, right? So once we have the providers, profitable, that will give us a framework to expand the provider capabilities. On top of that, we are, while we are getting the profitability, we are getting product market fit from our users. That means the product is actually easy to use. So we have this unique proposition where you have heavy distribution from a provider base, and you have amazing user experience from a user base, along with product market fit, along with costs being 90% lower. Now, that's the unique selling proposition that Amazon can give. And all this in an open source state, right? So our USP is world's first open cloud. And that's attractive to a lot of big companies. And look at our employees from where they came from, right? Our head of product, for example, was at HashiCorp, Terraform. I don't know if you're familiar with infrastructure, but Terraform is probably one of the most widely used orchestration engine out there, right? I mean, look at our VP of product, IBM, right? A lot of our employees come from this enterprise heavy background. And me, myself, I worked at Kaiser, I worked at IBM, right? So we understand enterprise really, really well. we also understand before you go put yourself in front of enterprises, you need to nail these USPs or unique selling points. So our USP is better, cheaper, faster. How is it faster? Low latency delivery using 500 or 1,000 nodes across the world. That's a very unique property for Akash, right? But in order, before
Yeah.
that happens, before we can run, we got to walk. We got to show this is profitable, right, to providers, right? And we have all these calculators, we have all these like optimization providers need to do to get to profitability, right? So,
Yeah,
like,
but
yeah.
yeah, sorry for interrupting, but before you go even to the big names, you can start working on the smaller businesses. Let's say I'm not talking about like IBM, I'm not talking about AWS. You can start working with low income businesses that can, let's say, promote the marketing and the purpose of the actual product, and then you attract more bigger companies when they'll notice all the features and how easy it is to use. Because eventually there is no reason that other companies wouldn't use right now the AKT product. You feel me?
Well,
Because
that's what I'm proposing. We're not going after big companies right now. We're going after
Mhm.
smaller companies. We're going after Web3 first, and then Web2 smaller companies
No,
that need to save money.
I'm not talking about crypto project. I'm talking about real businesses in the world. Let's say I don't know, like um, uh, bicycle manufacturer. I'm just like throwing names. You feel me? It's not only about the crypto projects.
Right.
It's
So
either
SMB, if you have to qualify a SMB business, right? So you need something of valuable to them, right? So an SMB's business is spending, let's say, $1,000 a month on cloud, right? So
yeah,
we go to them and be like, hey, instead of spending $1,000, spend $100, save
hmm
$900. Is that valuable to you? What do you think the answer is going to be? Some might say like,
sure,
yeah, it's valuable, great.
yeah,
But a lot of times people, I mean, the cost difference has to be significant for people to like for
to
it to
agree with
matter,
you and
right? So a
change.
lot of it, like bicycle manufacturers, for example, right? They're using a WordPress website. They're paying like $10 a month. For them, if I go and be like, hey, you're going to save $9 a month, moving to a cut. Oh, by the way, you got to do all this work. You know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
do you
But
think it's going to be
eventually,
unique selling? Yeah,
yeah,
eventually they'll come, right? Eventually they
yeah,
come.
yeah.
The point,
But
yeah,
it's everything is selling. You need to sell it to them for them to use it. They might not like it at the first time, but if you sell them the product good enough, they will take it. It doesn't matter
right,
if your product is more expensive or more cheaper. If you approach to the correct way to the correct customer, they'll use it. They'll try it. I don't know if they'll use it for the longer run, but they'll try it. And
right. So
I
that's why
think
I'm
this
saying the
is
user experience has to be phenomenal, right? So that's why
yeah.
we are investing in user experience. We have an entire front end team building that user experience. So a Joe
hmm
working at a bicycle shop can be like, oh, this is actually easy to use. It's not only cheaper,
mm,
it's actually easy to use, right?
yeah.
Right now,
Yeah.
user experience on a couch is not that great. Now, I'll be like very
hmm
open and honest. I mean, we're improving a lot, but Akash has been built for developers, not for normal users, not for Joe
Yeah.
working at a bicycle shop. Akash is
Yeah.
getting there, right? In that, like, we have the
Yeah.
next, like, next few months to work on retention and improve
hmm
adoption, right? Those metrics are not very attractive right now. All these metrics are on chain.
hmm
Anybody can see. So our
Yeah.
focus is to build a product, a good enough product to attract a Web2 user, not a Web3 user
Mm.
alone. We're starting off with Web3 because Web2 users don't know how to access tokens. Like if I go to a Joe a bicycle shop and be like, hey, you got to purchase AKT from Kraken. By the way, you got to give your passport to do so, right?
Yeah.
The guy be like, what the fuck? You know? So instead of that, we're adding credit card functionality. And you can't just add credit card functionality and sell tokens from a website legally, not in the US. So in order for
hmm
you to enable credit cards, you need to do the clever design. So we're using Auth0, for example, to do hosted wallets. Like our cost right now, you can decouple the payer from the user. That means the wallet that's paying can be different from the wallet that's using, right? So using that model, we can have the wallet that's paying fully hosted, and we can use user credit cards to fund that wallet, and using Auth0, we can delegate that the payability to an
Mm.
operator, and so as long as we do not give custody of the tokens, it's legal. It's
Mm.
illegal if someone comes and purchases AKT using
Okay.
that credit card. So we're
hmm
doing things like that. We have that capability already in the last mainnet we introduced. Now, how do you really realize? how can Joe at a bicycle shop be like, hey, take my credit card, and by the way, and just pay. I don't care about AKT. I don't care about using it. Just pay. That's coming, right? That's why we're investing a lot in front-end teams and user experience right now.
Yeah. And
so before we can go to a small business, we got to come to a value. Like, what is a business? Why would someone use Akash, right? They would use Akash. Well, it's cheap. That's a great attractive incentive. It's cheap is one thing. And second thing is, how long does it take for me to use Akash, right? That's a big question. If it's cheap and it's only saving me $9, if that's not a great thing for me. But it's cheap and I can like click, done. That's good enough product. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does make sense. You actually answered my question. I have only two more, okay? It's actually quick ones, and then I'll let the other one ask. I'm sorry about that. One, how are you planning to prepare for the SEC changing, and let's say how they're trying to approach right now the crypto regulation with the AKT? And the second one is, are you planning to add another department of sales to the project? Maybe, like I said, to approach companies or approach individuals that could try to promote and try and maybe, I don't know, try to make partnerships that will help the longer goal of the Akash network.
Yes. So first question, how are we preparing for regulatory onslaught, right? So we have been very, very fortunate to take precautions to be compliant from a SEC standpoint. Overclock Labs is a US company, and we do have a foundation that's international. That foundation is responsible for token issuances, and we have done everything by the book. Our current counsels used to work for SEC. Our lawyers used to work for SEC. So we were very fortunate enough to take a very, very conservative approach when it comes to fundraising. We haven't sold. Our initial exchange listings have not been in the US, right? None of the US exchange listings has been initiated by Akash. Even Kraken came from Kraken. We did not ask Kraken to list. They themselves listed, right? So we've been very, very conservative when it comes to issuing tokens to US holders. When we did our fundraisers, we made sure there are no US investors involved. A lot of the funds were international funds for the most part. So we are very, very careful, very conservative. We are very compliant when it comes to regulatory onslaught. And second, and the category of things we're in, right? We're a cloud company, right? We're not we don't have interest-bearing assets. We don't have all the DeFi stuff that are basically money building blocks. Our model is very simple. You have AKT, you can use AKT to buy for compute in a market price. The market prices are fully transparent, fully on-chain, fully open. There is zero insider trading or insider manipulation of anything of some sort, right? So from a category standpoint, we're a cloud computing business. We're not like money-making machine for DeFi investors. We're not a speculative asset, right? So we haven't done anything to sell or expose ourselves to US investors so far. So we're pretty good in that. It's very, very unlikely that we will have some enforcement action from SEC, considering considering how conservative we are and considering where we stand, right? Now, that may not be true for other DeFi protocols. DeFi protocols are definitely promising high returns and all that stuff to US investors and doing it in a decentralized way. So, it could be. We're going to probably see a lot of SEC enforcement in that purview.
Yeah, it actually gives me lots more, let's say, less pressure about how it's going to act. And I would be happy if you could answer my last question about the sales departments, if it's something you talked about and if it's something you're planning for the future.
Yes. So sales. So we do have a BD team, right? We do have a decent BD team, and we're growing our BD team. If you look at our hiring, we're looking for solutions engineers. So our biggest challenge right now for our sales is not lack of pipeline. We have a lot of companies, both in terms of providers as well as payers, as well as tenants, that are wanting to do larger initiatives. Our focus right now is distribution more than sales. So sales is like taking on individual accounts. distribution is like taking on individual accounts that'll give us a lot more deployments. So, for example, Chia, right? So Chia is a massive network. So Chia miners are using Akash. They like Akash, but it's not the easiest thing to use, right? So for them, we need an account manager to work with the Chia community. And this account manager, essentially, their job is to make sure that we have a healthy relationship with the community and the Akash Network team can respond to requests from Chia community in terms of customizing the content, in terms of customizing some of the interfaces to suit Chia miners, right? So a lot of the effort right now from a BD standpoint is not your typical sales organization, but a lot of business development on strategic initiative, right? So that said, we are doing Omnibus, for example. Omnibus makes it super simple to run a validator on Akash, right? So if we make that super simple, other validators, like there are about, I don't know, 5,000 validator nodes in Cosmos ecosystem, can easily come on board, right? So our efforts are not like individual accounts, even though we have, in a typical sales model where you just pick up you have like a bunch of leads and you come and you pick up your phone, you do cold calls. That is not like our biggest problem. Our problem is not pipeline. Our problem is, acting and following through the pipeline. So we're hiring for a lot of solutions engineers that are outbound focused. That means they're focused on customers. And their job is to really customize solutions, really talk to people in a technical way, not in a salesy way, and really solve problems. So we're not looking for like people to fill the top of the funnel. We're looking for people to complete the funnel. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it actually is. I really appreciate your time and effort to answer my questions. And in the end of the AMA, I'll send you a proposal to your DM and we could talk about this later. Thank you very much.
Sounds good.